Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my review for The Missing, Episode 4, Gone Fishing. And this episode, once again, left me on another, what the hell does that mean moment. Not as much as the last one, but this one definitely meant that. And this episode was very, very good. I did not think it was the best episode of the season. I thought there was a lot of answers to this episode. There was a lot of stuff this episode, makes us think about. Once again, introduce a new character, which I feel the show is just going to do every single episode. And we're now at the half point of the season, so definitely things are starting to, really start to get really interesting. And let's just get this episode, because overall, I thought this was a very good episode, and let's just get to it. So we start off in a classroom in present-day France, and we see this this young blonde teacher. She's reading Alice in Wonderland to her students, and she jumps at the sound of some sort of noise, but one of the kids tells her it was just a door slamming, and she's somewhere else, though, clearly reliving some sort of traumatic memory. And right away, I'm like, I want to find out more about her character. So I didn't know really what her character was, but I definitely want to find out more about her. So we then see Julian coming to meet Tony in his room at Hotel La Eden in Chaland du Bois to discuss the disturbing video footage, of course, at the end of last week. Because, of course, I myself was like, what the fuck did that mean? I did not know what any of that meant. It didn't make any sense to me. And basically they talk about it right away. He says, what they've seen, he says, what he has seen, no other father should see. And I agree with that. He shouldn't see that. And despite the irony that the footage is almost the, biggest sign of his son that Tony's seen, and basically he says, but I thought you should know we found something else on that tape. And I'm just like, okay, what'd they find on that tape? We don't get to find out, because then we cut to 2006, where the police are investigating the other big thing from last week, which of course is when Julian was in that huge, car crash last week. The bloody murder at the train station, where he was meeting, Julian, of an undercover police officer with important information about the crime ring he had infiltrated. Now, the police know the ring is involved in human sex trafficking and suspect they're involved in Oliver's disappearance. The good news is that Julian has began to suspect Khalid of being the press leak. Now, this kind of does make sense, because, of course, we know that Khalid did something. We know that he was the one that, we know that there's something going on between him and, Malik. We know there's something going on between the two of them. So the revelations about Tony's violent past somehow made it into the papers, and Julian tells the Ronts that he thinks correctly that Khalid is the mole. So he sends Khalid back to canvasses the area surrounding the crime scene, which he's already done, in order to keep him away from the real investigation. So Mark informs Julian that he's been called back to London, and he also asks a very reasonable question. And it's a very, grim question, but a very reasonable question as well. He asks if Oliver has been the victim of some sort of trafficking gang after 5 days, what are the chances of finding him alive? And I kind of agree with that. I mean, he might not be alive. It makes sense. And if he's not alive, then that kind of makes Tony's character even more interesting, because he's basically, reopening a case of something that is not true. But we know that Oliver is still alive because we saw that tape. So my question is, where maybe Oliver was, kidnapped or taken somewhere. I don't know. I mean, there's no proof that he was part of this human trafficking gang. There's no, it's not, a confirmed thing. So you never know. But it's just, I don't know what to say about that. But before he gets an answer, Laurence whisks him away to the pool complex where Oliver disappeared. There he finds Emily kneeled over on the ground by the pool, sobbing. She crawls into Mark's arms, and he hugs her. And every single episode, you can see why these two are getting together. They get closer and closer and closer as the show's going on, and you can see that Mark is really helping her out. So we then go to Mark's home in London, and he's waiting in line for a cab home from the station. He sees Malik and decides to confront the journalist for trashing the Hughes in the papers when they're already so devastated by the loss of their child. He's obviously upset about that, but Malik couldn't care less. He doesn't give a shit about it, actually, and he doesn't try to hide his apathy either. He gleefully informs Mark that the stories he's written about the case have helped him land a job at the Telegraph. So he doesn't really say anything. he does everything but confirms that he's not just a ruthless reporter, but a straight-up sociopath. And he says it may be that the worst day in that family's life could turn out to be the best day of mine. He chalks up his profiting from the huge tragedy to a cold, perverse kind of karma. Newton's law of motion: for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And I thought that was definitely very interesting. Let me see what happens next. Okay. So, then we go back to France, and Tony is visiting Ian's business headquarters. Now, of course, we still do not see Ian in the present. We get one little nod to Ian in the present, but Ian's character is slowly becoming the best character on this show. Because we know he's hiding something. We know he's playing, like, really, really nice guy, but he's not a really nice guy. So clearly he's hiding something, and we have no idea what it is. And it makes me, like, so more interested in this character, and I love where they're going with this. Ian wants to make Tony a signatory on the 100K reward money account, which Tony reluctantly agrees to. And Ian notices Tony's hand still wrapped from when he cut it, breaking into Vincent's apartment. And Ian already told Tony to stay away from Vincent, and so have the police for that matter. So Tony hesitates for a moment, and when he answers, we're thrown off to hear him tell the truth. And Ian looks like he's pissed, but trying to hide it, and we still don't exactly know what his connection with Vincent is, but he can't have Tony, you know, poking around. So he tells Tony again to lay off Vincent, let the police handle it. And then there's a very quietly creepy moment when Tony looks down to sign the bank papers, and Ian just gives, like, this really warm expression on his face. He wears around Tony. It devolves into a menacing frown. It's a very interesting, a very subtle moment, but definitely very creepy. So Tony leaves. He buys a newspaper from a stand on the street, and the man in front of him is buying cigarettes. And he hears something alarming in his chains with the salesman, and it's a French phrase that means, I will not say anything. So, I don't know what that means, but that was interesting. So Tony and Julian decide to follow lead to Paris to track down the girlfriend of the undercover officer Antoine that was killed. So they knock on the door and are greeted by a young woman strung on drugs, and it's that teacher in the beginning of the episode. This girl's name is Reni, and she doesn't seem to, and now we actually know, like, what her problem is. Her boyfriend has died, but she doesn't seem to understand that he's dead. So I think her character is definitely very interesting. I really like her character. And she has no idea he was an undercover cop, but her brother is in the crime ring, and she says she'll tell them what she knows about it. They get another fix, and Julian agrees. And back in present day, we learn that Julian found in the footage he brought to Tony's hotel room, the camera was left on overnight, and the next morning it captured an image of a cleaning company's van parked on the club, and the question was, what was it doing there on a Sunday morning? So Julian confirmed that none of the neighbors had anything to do with that van. He looked up the cleaning company and found the boss, whose record is clean, but who hangs around with a shady character that has been on police's radar for years. And this is the first legit suspect after the false lead on Vincent, but it doesn't feel like much of a revelation. So, I mean, it's the first time they have an actual suspect, but it doesn't really seem like anything, really. So, Tony and Julian hop in the car to go track down Reni 8 years after the first time they found her in order to find out if she recognizes the man who owns the cleaning company. So while driving, Julian warns Tony, he says, all too often, for the right reasons, we can make the greatest of mistakes. And we're pretty sure, you know, I'm pretty sure that Tony is going to do something. We know that Tony, really what this is trying to show is that Tony is going to do something. We know that Tony has a very bad track record. We know he has very bad anger issues. And this is just showing that Tony is going to probably do something in a few minutes. So, I think it definitely, I mean, he's going to do something that's going to basically destroy this case. I mean, definitely he's going to do something. I don't feel this show is going to end happily. I just don't think it's going to. So, I definitely feel Tony's going to do something because of that. So back in 2006, Tony has tracked down Vincent yet again, not ready to give up on the idea that this is the guy that kidnapped Oliver, who he's not. We know he's not. But Tony doesn't want to give that up because he wants answers. Just like me, I want answers, but he's not going to. But it turns out the phrase that caught Tony's attention on the newsstand, I won't say anything, is something he heard Vincent say when he came home to find his apartment broken into. So that's why he's so suspicious about Vincent. So before Tony revealed himself, he asked who did he think it was, and Vincent said he was just telling whoever the intruder was that if they let him alone, he wouldn't call the cops, which sounds pretty believable. I mean, it kind of makes sense. So Vincent says he is innocent, still feels regret for bad things he's done in the past, and he says guilt is like cancer. You can treat the symptoms, but never the cause. But Tony's convinced that Vincent knows something. Maybe Vincent thought Ian was the one who broke into his apartment for some reason. So he's very on to Vincent right now. So meanwhile, Julian stayed in Lily to deal with Reni, and it turns out he was lying when he said he'd get her drugs. Instead, he's locked her in his hotel bathroom while she kicks and screams. I mean, she's going crazy. She even threatens, she's even like, you want me to pleasure you or something? Like, she, you can tell, has a lot of problems. So we then go back 8 years forward to Reni's present-day home, where she left Julian and Tony in to talk about the new lead on the case. So while Tony, Julian, Emily, and Vincent have been able to extract themselves from the past, Reni is one person who's managed to completely turn her life around, and she's a completely different person now. Now she's a school teacher, she has a nice boyfriend, a beautiful home. Like, she's completely turned herself around. The others really haven't. I mean, Tony has been stuck in this case for all this time. Emily's trying to, avoid it. Julian wanted to move on with his life, but it's not working. Vincent's trying to get rid of the man he was and try to, clean himself up. We see that, but she really has turned herself around completely. She's the first person we've seen that's really turned herself around. I thought her character was definitely very interesting because of that. And she doesn't recognize the photo of their new suspect, but knows someone from her past that might. But given how much she has to lose now, we can tell why she's so hesitant to revisit her darker days. She's kind of like Emily. She doesn't want to, remember those dark days. She doesn't. So in London, Emily confronts Mark about a lie she's caught him in. He said he was being promoted, but she found out that he actually quit his job. Why? Because his career isn't going anywhere because he's with Emily. So instead of finding the woman's son, he ended up getting engaged to her. And he says, I'm the man who swooped down on a victim. And now I kind of feel like we know why this case is closed. Because I feel like him and Emily were getting closer and closer. We can tell in the flashbacks they're getting closer and closer. So because of this, I kind of feel like they got engaged and that closed the case because they just didn't care anymore. That's kind of what I feel happened. So it reminds us how strange it is that their relationship, came out of Oliver's disappearance. It really reminds us that. So you can tell that their relationship is definitely starting to fall apart. So over in Chaland du Bois, Tony and Julian are getting a drink at the hotel bar. They're talking about how they've changed or haven't since the last time they were at the hotel 8 years ago. And Tony remarks that, and I thought this was a great scene, he remarks that while he's giving up a lot, he doesn't regret anything. And Julian presses Tony. He says, you're so sure there's nothing you've done that you regret? Of course, there is a lot of stuff that Tony's done that he's regret. Let's talk about that bar fight that he got into, that man that hates him. I can't remember his name now. Greg that hates him, and everything for that fight he got into and everything. And there is definitely stuff that he regrets. And I think Julian's trying to tell him that, you know what, you need to be more remorseful about things. And basically, he says he doesn't regret anything, but I really feel he does. And I feel the reason he's not saying he doesn't regret anything is because he did this all. We know why he did this. He did this to find his son. Even though he did very, very violent things, he did it to find his son. So that's why he doesn't regret it. So I definitely like that they are going in that direction. So back in London, Vincent is getting another hormone suppressant shot and telling the doctor how he feels like a new man, cured and ready to tackle some unresolved business from his past. And he says he's going to see an old friend and then his journey can truly begin. And I really like where they're taking Vincent's character. He's really trying to turn his life around, and I'm interested in seeing if he's really going to be successful. It seems like he really is starting to be successful at that, so I like seeing that. So in Lily, France, Reni is grabbing lunch at her school cafeteria, and she looks at her bowl of green soup. When she comes to some kind of realization, she gets it to leave in a hurry, and my question is, she remembered something. You can tell that she sort of has, like, this look on her face. We don't really know what it is, but it definitely has something to do with the case. So upon flashing back to 2006 in the hotel room where Julian was forced to detox her, we see him bring her a bowl of green soup. That's what the connection is. Because he brought her a bowl of green soup, and her getting that bowl of green soup made her remember something. So clearly that has made her remember something, and I have no idea what it is, but I think it definitely is very interesting the way they did that. That a bowl of green soup is what made her remember some stuff about this disappearance. So in Chaland du Bois, the man who owns the cleaning company is still sitting in his van with binoculars, watching Khalid, of course, because they're very suspicious about him. As he sweeps the area around the crime scene, he's alarmed to see that Khalid has found something, but he can't tell what it is, and neither can we. So Julian visits Ian in his apartment, six-pack in hand, and asks to talk to him. to his friend, who is an influential judge. He is still obsessed with pinning Vincent down, even though Ian has told him to back off several times. Ian agrees, but he's just saying that to appease Tony. Tony notices paintings of a little girl all over Ian's apartment, and figures why Ian is so intent on helping him and Emily find Oliver. Now, my question is, did Ian possibly lose someone? Now, we know that there's a, drawing of Oliver. So did Ian possibly lose someone? It kind of would make sense if that's what's going on there. Or maybe he's holding some girl hostage. Maybe there's this little girl that he's holding hostage and he has the paintings of. Because I still kind of feel like Ian's the kidnapper. Because we know nothing about him. Especially this next line that he says to Tony. And he tells him the story of how his daughter disappeared one night a long time ago, and he paints her to keep her memory alive. So, yeah, he did lose someone. We can tell he did, and I thought that was a very well-done reveal. I definitely really enjoyed that. And he tells him, we're not that dissimilar, me and you, Tony. He says, carrying all that guilt over losing a child, it's something that's out of our control. And then he said the same exact thing that Vincent says to Tony. Guilt is like cancer. You can't treat the symptoms, but never the cause. So Tony has this look in his face like, what the hell? He's completely, he has no idea what's going on. He knows there's something weird going on, definitely. And I'm very interested in seeing what's going to happen with Ian's character. He goes back to the hotel, and he tells Emily about this connection between Vincent and Ian, and he begs her to believe him. And he tells her, if we keep shutting each other out, we're going to lose each other. And it's very sad to watch because we know that this marriage is not going to work out. We know that somehow this is all going to fall apart. We know that Emily is going to prefer, is going to leave him for Mark. We know all this is going to happen. And the way the show is setting it up is very well done, in my opinion. I really like the way they're setting that up. It's very well done. So then we get to the final revelation. It seems like every single episode is going to end this way. We see Vincent goes to visit Ian at his construction company's office after not having seen him for years. And there, Vincent is told that Ian has been gone for years. And of course, I have been wondering why we haven't seen Ian in the past. And we find out that he's been gone, maybe even dead. And we've been going back and forth on what kind of guy he is. And this is just like, what the hell does that mean? So whoever kidnapped Oliver in 2006 definitely wasn't happy to see a large sum of money. So maybe they killed Ian because of that. I don't know. I just don't think that Ian, I don't know what's going on with Ian. But it makes me so more suspicious about his character. And there's so many things to talk about now. First of all, what does this mean? What does this mean, what Ian said? Do you think that Ian was killed? Was he kidnapped? Did he fake his death? I kind of feel like maybe he faked his death and kidnapped Oliver. Is that story about his daughter true? Is it all bullshit? I don't believe a thing he says anymore. I really don't. I don't believe a thing that Ian says. Okay, that whole thing about his daughter, I don't believe. I don't believe a thing that Ian says because I don't trust him now. I don't trust him at all. And I think that maybe he's holding some girl a lot hostage. And maybe he did kidnap Oliver. I could definitely see that being a possibility. Reni, what do you think that Reni is trying to remember? What do you think this realization is? There's clearly something that happened in 2006 that's getting her to remember that green bowl of soup. We know that Julian gave her that green bowl of soup, but what else happened after that? I'm very interested in seeing what happened there. Is Khalid a suspect? I don't know if Khalid's a suspect. I don't really think he is anymore. We know that Khalid is currently in jail, so we don't know why that happened, but we'll have to see why. Emily and Mark, their relationship is definitely falling apart. Do you think that Mark closed the case because he got engaged to Emily? I could definitely see that being a possibility. It definitely makes sense if that's really what happened. It does make sense, definitely. What do you think about Tony? Why do you think Tony is not remorseful at all? I think it's because he would do anything to find his son. I think that's what that's really trying to show. But that's my review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will actually be for, something I don't think you guys, they released the entire Christmas special of the Fosters online. So I'm actually gonna watch that, and then I will review it for you guys. But yeah, I'm gonna watch that, and then I'll review it. So I will see you guys for that. Let me know what you guys think of this episode, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Okay, bye.